Guys, here to another classic movie for you guys, and this movie reviewing, I'm surprised I haven't actually seen this movie. I want to see it for a while. I figured I'd finally watch it this year because I actually really do love the story that this movie is telling, and I've seen different adaptations of it, and that is the 1967 biographical crime drama classic Bonnie and Clyde. Now, Bonnie and Clyde, like I said, I was really looking forward to this movie, mainly because me personally, I love the story of Bonnie and Clyde. I think it's one of the most fascinating stories in history. I love learning about them. I think they had very interesting lifestyles, things like that. Plus, I'm very familiar with this story. I mean, I haven't seen the musical, but I've heard the musical and I've heard the music from it. I know the story, and of course, I saw the 2013 adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde on Lifetime, which if you guys want to hear my thoughts on that, check it out. It's on YouTube. It was an okay adaptation. Nothing incredible, nothing really all that memorable, but it was, for the most part, I think, pretty good. But this is really what I hear is the basically, like, defined as the adaptation for Bonnie and Clyde. Like, if you're supposed to see one adaptation, it should be this movie, and that's really why I wanted to check it out. I wanted to see if, how this was, how they fleshed out the characters, and after watching this, not only am I happy I watched this version of Bonnie and Clyde and that I did check this out, but for me, this movie was also a masterpiece. I really do think it is the best adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde I've personally seen. I mean, yes, the musical is great. I'm not going to talk about the musical. I'm talking about film adaptation. This, without a doubt, is the best adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde there is, and I don't really think there's ever going to be a better one after this movie because this one just went so well. Now, let's get to the plot. For some reason, you don't know the plot of Bonnie and Clyde, which there could be some people that don't. I mean, there could be some people that don't even, might not have seen adaptation. If you haven't seen the adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde or any story, basically Bonnie and Clyde, you have these two people, Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker. Well, one day Clyde Barrow, he is this criminal, basically. He wants to be remembered as a criminal, and he's trying to steal Bonnie's mother's car, basically. And Bonnie, meanwhile, is this waitress, but she really wants to be an actress. That's really what she wants to do. She's kind of just doing waitressing on the side. She's not really getting to do what she wants. She wants to be like a big actress, and Clyde goes up to her one day and basically decides to give her an offer that she should work with him, and that if she works with him, she could become famous and become rich and everything. And Bonnie hesitantly goes with him, but as it goes on, you start to see that Clyde is involved with a lot more crime stuff than Bonnie thought that he was, and basically the rest of the story is throughout the history, throughout them basically robbing people and committing all these crimes and basically doing what they can to make a life for themselves in the various situations they run into. And that basically is the plot of Bonnie and Clyde, and I just, like I said, I find the story very fascinating, and really I think the thing that makes this movie the best out of all the ones I've seen is the acting here, because the way they portray these characters is the way I've loved them portray them. I mean, like I said, the musical I think very much does the same thing, and I think the musical even fleshes them out more. Like, the musical goes all the way to like their childhood, while this just starts in the middle of the scene, which I'll get into. But the acting here I think was fantastic from everyone. Let's talk about Warren Beatty as Clyde. I really think he understood the part of Clyde very well. Clyde Barrow is not a villain. He's not, and I think a lot of people are portrayed in the way. I think a lot of people have seen Clyde Barrow as a villain. He's not a villain. What he is someone that wants to be remembered for all the wrong reasons. He's had a lot of shit going on in his life. He's been poor all his life and basically trying to make a way for himself. And to him, this is the best way of doing that. Yes, he's committing some things that obviously aren't great, but he's doing what he can to make a life for himself. And I think he did a very good job. You really do see that portrayal of Clyde Barrow. But the thing I think he got down the best is actually the emotion. Like, you really do see that he does care about the people that he's working with. He really does love Bonnie. And you definitely do see that, because I think this is a role that could have easily come across as very kind of wooden and very malicious. And I think he does that very well. You definitely get that intimidating side from him, but you get that even more caring side. Like, he does care about these people, and he does understand that he's asking them for a lot, but he really does need them, and he really is trying to help them. And in his eyes, he is doing the right thing. He is trying to make their lives better. And even though they don't necessarily agree, he kind of pulls them in, and I really love the way they portray that. I think he did a fantastic job in the movie, and he just killed it, really. He was fantastic. Although the best performance, without a doubt, in this movie, the person that steals it is Faye Dunaway as Bonnie Parker. I mean, she just got this role down perfectly. I mean, again, just like Warren Beatty, I think Faye Dunaway is probably the best Bonnie Parker we've ever had. I think she really understood Bonnie perfectly, because Bonnie really is an innocent girl. She's a waitress, and, she just isn't really happy with the way her life is going, and she kind of just takes it, she takes a risk. She figures, all right, I'll go with Clyde, maybe he'll make my life better, but she gets more than she bargains for. She starts to fall in love with Clyde, and at first she wants to just get out of this. She doesn't want any part of the crime stuff, but she starts starts to get kind of intrigued because she likes this rebellious kind of lifestyle. She likes being known as an outlaw. She likes doing these things. And their relationship is by far the most interesting part of this movie because despite the fact that Bonnie isn't really okay with what they're doing, I mean, there's even a part in the movie where they've committed all these crimes and she tries to leave and he tries to tell her that you can't really do that because he's pulled her in. Their relationship is the most interesting thing here because no matter what, they do stick by each other. They have some fights here and there, but they really do love each other and they really do want to help each other, and in many ways they can relate to each other. They both have gone through a lot of shit. They're both trying to do things for the right reasons. Obviously they're committing crimes, but in their eyes they're doing the right thing and they're doing it for all the right reasons, and I love the relationship. You really felt that chemistry between them. You understood why they would love each other, and I think they really portrayed the idea of the fact that these two did love each other. You know, there wasn't any doubt that these two were madly in love. That's the thing. Bonnie and Clyde were in love, and that's the reason why I think, you know, they're regarded as one of the most interesting relationships in U.S. history because of the way the relationship was. A character that I don't think I've seen in any adaptation is Michael J. Pollard as C.W. Moss. I've seen, obviously, the other characters in this one, but C.W. Moss, this is a guy that works with Bonnie and Clyde, and I don't know if they made up his character for the movie, but I think he was a very interesting character, just the way that they kind of pull him in, the way he starts working with them. I really thought he was very interesting, especially towards the second half of this movie, when you find out kind of what's going on with them. I thought he was very interesting. And then the two characters I do want to talk about is Gene Hackman as Buck Barrow. I mean, Gene Hackman, you know, he's known as one of the greats, and you really do see that here. The thing about Buck is very much like Bonnie. He doesn't necessarily condone what Clyde is doing. In fact, he doesn't really want to do crime, but he wants to support his brother, and he wants to do the right thing. And Buck has done some things, like, for example, you know, he was supposed to go to jail, and he didn't go to jail. Things like, you know, he didn't go to jail and things like that. He has done some things, but he isn't really into crime. He doesn't necessarily want to be involved with this, and you really do see that throughout the movie. I think he did a very good job. Again, you really do see that relationship these two brothers have, and the fact that they're really going to do anything for each other, and I definitely really love that. And then Estelle Parsons as Blanche, I honestly felt the worst for. I think out of all the characters, she's the one we feel most sympathetic for. I mean, Bonnie, yes, but Blanche definitely, because Blanche is the innocent one here. She's just Buck's wife, and she gets pulled in, and she doesn't really understand what she's dealing with. She doesn't realize, you know, what this really entails and everything. She kind of just thinks that they're just going on this trip or whatever, and when she realizes what's going on, it's kind of just too late, and it really is sad to see. She has this one incredible scene where, she's talking about what she expected was going to happen and, you know, her love for Buck. It's an incredible scene overall. There's also some clashing between her and Bonnie, but eventually these two actually do get very close, and I definitely really did love that. The evolution of the core four, the core five, I thought was very interesting. I thought they all worked very well together, and you really do care for all these characters. You understood why they want to do this. You understand that they want to make a life for themselves, and I really did love that. Denver Pyle as Frank Hammer, the guy that basically is hunting them down. I mean, he does a really great job. I think he definitely did a very good job in the movie. I think he was definitely very good, but again, he's just the sheriff really trying to do the right thing. He's trying to bring him to justice, and it's just not working. And we didn't necessarily see things on his side, like, we don't necessarily need to, but we do hear, obviously, that, you know, he's hunting them down and things like that. And then the only person I really want to talk about is Dub Taylor as Ivan Moss. One of the more, I think, underrated performances in this movie. I really think he did a great job. He has some really great scenes, definitely, and he really was fantastic. I absolutely loved, his character. He was very fascinating, and I think he did a great job. So overall, all the cast is fantastic. The cast is by far one of the best things about this movie. But the directing, I think, was also really great here, because the way that Arthur Penn tells it, he tells it as a character story. You know, he really tells it, it's just the way it is. You know, he didn't really try to change anything. The tone is basically, you know, kind of hopeful, honestly, which I thought was interesting. He kind of makes the tone hopeful. You really do want things to go well for them, which you know it's not going to, but the way he directs it, you kind of think there is some hope there, and you kind of see it as you do care about these characters. A very sympathetic story, and I love the way that he directed, because you could direct it as just these people that are doing the wrong things, and, oh, they're terrible people, but they're really not terrible people, and that's something I loved. I think his directing was fantastic. He got the tone down perfectly, and I definitely really did love that. The writing here, though, is just fantastic. I mean, probably one of the best screenplays I've heard in a while. I mean, the first 20 minutes, I'm like, this is incredible. I loved everything about it. I mean, the first 20 minutes is just fantastic. It's a very slow-paced movie. It really is. I mean, the first 20 minutes is basically them meeting up and them agreeing to actually do this. Like, it takes a while for Clyde to actually pull Bonnie in. I think it was interesting the way they did that. And the thing I love the most about the writing is the way Bonnie and Clyde are written. They're not victorious all the time. In fact, in the beginning, they get caught so many times, and they just make it. And the way that they just make it it's crazy. Each time they get caught, you're thinking something bad's gonna happen, something bad's gonna happen. Something bad happens every single time. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde make it each time, well, until the end, of course, you guys, I'm sure, know what happens. But, and, up till then, they basically get away while other people are getting hurt around them, and it's really crazy to watch. I mean, just knowing the situation they're in, the way the writing was done, I thought was very interesting, and I really did love that, and I definitely thought that was very well done. The lines here, there were some really great iconic lines, there's some incredible scenes, and it's a very dialogue-driven movie. Even though it does focus on two criminals, it doesn't really focus on that. It focuses more on where this is taking them. Yes, there's action in the movie, which I'll get into, but I think the writing was very well done. It was a very, you really do care about all these characters, and I think the writing overall really was as great as a screenplay for Bonnie and Clyde can be. I really think they fleshed out everything perfectly. I think they really told the story in the best way possible. I mean, you really do see that all the characters have these hopes and dreams, but eventually they kind of have to just put that aside and realize really where their life is heading, and if they really want to continue this, because they can't really get out of it. And it's sad to see, but you see that at the end of the day, they do have each other. And in many ways, this is a story about family. And, as much as it's about Bonnie and Clyde, I think it's as much about Bonnie and Clyde as it is, Buck and Clyde or Bonnie and Blanche. It's all about these five. It's about these five. Even though Bonnie and Clyde is the core of the story, they're the ones that, are the main ones. They, you care about the other characters just as much because they're kind of going through the same situation, and I really did love that. Of course, this all takes place during the Great Depression. I think it's a very good interpretation of how crazy life was during the Great Depression. I mean, things weren't good then. People were rebelling. People were doing all these terrible things. Bonnie and Clyde are just one of the few that made some really irrational decisions just to get money, because that's what they did. They want to do this to get money. They want to do this to make a life for themselves. They were both dirt poor, and they want to get out of this, and it's a really interesting scene. I love the way that was done. And like I said, there are some very effective emotional scenes. I honestly did get a bit teary at points, especially in some of Blanche scenes. Oh my god, she was incredible. And I think the writing here was just fantastic. I really did love the writing. The cinematography here, I still think looks amazing today. I really don't think that there's any sort of updating they could do here. And let me explain why. This movie basically did the cinematography in the best way possible, because the 2013 version has a lot of slow-mo and a lot of unnecessary stuff like that. While this movie, you feel like you're in the 1930s. You really do. You feel like you're in that time period. You feel like you're on the road right with Bonnie and Clyde. The way cinematography was done, I think it was fantastic. And a lot of people say this is the first movie of the new age of film, like the more rebellious adult side of film, where things weren't as clean, and it broke, many cinematic traditions, and, kind of just stood out as this landmark film. And I really do think it deserves to be that way. I mean, especially knowing this movie came out in 1967, it does take a lot of risks. And yes, movies in 1967, they were starting to get very risky, but this really was one of the first ones that was very adult and wasn't afraid to show some really violent shit. I mean, it does get very violent at times, and I really do appreciate the movie for going in that direction. I mean, if the movie was made in 1950, it wouldn't be able to show anything, but 1967, they can show the blood, they can show what they do. Some of the things they do is really crazy, but again, they kind of just have to do that to be in the life that they are in. Now, let's talk about the score here, because the score I found very interesting. The only score in this movie is this banjo that plays anytime Bonnie and Clyde are almost, condemned by the police, anytime they're almost brought to justice, they're running away. And the way that I kind of saw that is this is their lifestyle. To them, this is kind of fun at some point. So they're kind of enjoying this. And it was interesting the way that they played it. I mean, the way that it was played off, it doesn't feel as serious as it is, but I feel like that's kind of the point. This is just kind of the life cycle that they're in. And to them, this is just part of their life. And in many ways, they're kind of having fun with it. And the way they portrayed it, I thought was just very interesting. The way that they had this banjo music and not really have you have it be as serious music as you think it's going to be. I thought it was a very interesting choice, and I really did admire the way they did that. I thought that was really cool. It was very well realized. I definitely did not expect them to do that, but I thought that was really cool. The editing here I thought was perfect. I think the movie really flew by for me. It's 111 minutes, but I was into it the whole time. There wasn't a single dull scene in this film. I think everything was fantastic. The way that they go from the journey that these characters go on, the circumstances they end up in, it's really crazy, and especially because the whole movie, again, you know what the outcome is going to be. If you know the story of Bonnie and Clyde, which you should know the story of Bonnie and Clyde going into this movie. You don't need to, but I do think it adds a bit of an impact if you do know the story going into the movie, which I'm pretty sure everyone pretty much knows the story of Bonnie and Clyde. It's a very famous story. You know what the situation they're going to get into is, but you really do have this hope for them. You want them to get out of this. You want them to be victorious. Even though you know they're not going to be, you do want to hold out that hope for them. And it's very interesting the way they portrayed that. I really love the way this was done, and for me, it really just adds this, ounce of suspense and this it's more present tension and even emotional context. You really do care, and especially the ending of the movie. It is really sad. The ending of the movie is very sad. It's very abrupt, and the way it ended, I thought was very good. I love the way it was done, and this was a very good. This was a very big movie with the Oscars as well. There were a lot of things this movie was nominated for. It only won two things, but it was nominated for pretty much everything: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Writing, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Best Actress in a Leading Role. But Estelle Parsons did win for Blanche, which I'm not surprised she did win because she really was fantastic. And Blanche, like I said, you really do fear that fear in her. Like, she really seems to be the most terrified. There's a scene where, like, there are gunshots going off. She's, like, screaming. It really is hard to watch. And then Burnett Gouffet really did win for Best Cinematography, which I really do think he deserves. I mean, really, just watch this movie now. Imagine 1967 when they didn't have that kind of technology. I don't know how they did, but it really looks like they went to the 1930s. And there are some incredible scenes here. The clothing's great, the time period's great, the score is great, just everything about it, you just really get that feel that this is the 1930s, and you really do feel like this is, like I said, the standard production of Bonnie and Clyde. I really don't think there could be a better production than this movie. I really do think it's the best way to end it, and especially the ending of the movie, like I said, it's very sad, but again, you knew it was coming. You knew that this was going to be the way the movie ends, because there really is no other way to end it. That's kind of just how it ends, and I mean, honestly, it's sad, but that's the way it ends, and if I had to recommend one adaptation, I recommend this or the musical. The musical, for me, I think is still a great adaptation, but I'm talking about movie-wise here. Definitely this over the 2013 one. The 2013 one, it goes in this really weird direction where Bonnie's, like, psychotic and Joy's killing all these things. It's very weird the way they did that, but I think this was a much more straightforward, much more deeper, just more realistic adaptation. It shows these two people that, yes, they aren't doing the best things, but in their eyes, they're doing it for a good reason, and they want to help each other. They want to make a life for themselves, and you really do understand why they're doing this. I really think they portrayed it as best as they could, and for me, I absolutely love this adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde. For someone who already loved the story, I was even more impressed. There were things I found in this movie that I didn't know before, and I was surprised. I was going in this movie like, I'm probably just gonna know everything that happens, but no, there were some things I didn't know, and I was very happy with that. Like, for example, a lot of the things with CW's character, I really knew nothing about CW Moss, and I came out knowing a lot of him. I thought it was a very interesting character, very fascinating. I really love the way they portrayed him. I didn't know a lot about Buck and Blanche as well. I didn't know a whole lot about them. I mean, I knew stuff from the musical and the 2013 version, but I feel like we learned a lot more about them in here than we do in the others. Even some of the characters that they meet, like Eugene Wilder has a short cameo in this movie. You really do care about them. You understand why they have to kill these people. You understand why they have to rob them. You understand why they have to torture them. In their eyes, they're just doing whatever they can to make a life for themselves, and you really do understand that. So overall, guys, I absolutely love Bonnie and Clyde. I definitely think it's a masterpiece. It is definitely, should be remembered as one of the films that paved the way for the direction films are today. I really don't think you could have made this film any different. By the way, let's talk about the action real quick, because that was something else that really impressed me. This is a movie where you didn't have to do a lot with the action. Because it takes place in the 1930s, there's not really a lot you have to do. So I really was impressed with the way they handled the action here. For me, I think the way they handled the action is the best way to handle it. They didn't focus, they didn't rely on the action. They relied more on the emotion and just the fear in these characters and the way that banjo plays, just so effortlessly, just, kind of like lighthearted, honestly. It's very interesting. I really love the way that was done. You really do see that Clyde is kind of enjoying this while the others are not. I definitely found that to be very interesting, and I can understand someone could laugh at that, but the first time I heard that, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I really thought it was a very interesting choice, and really went with the rebellious lifestyle thing, really shows that to them this is nothing. They're getting ambushed all the time. They're getting chased by cops. To them, this really isn't much of anything, and, they don't really have any fear about, or any doubts of, is this going to go right? Is this going to go wrong? They kind of just think it's going to go fine, and I think you definitely do see that throughout the movie. I think they really portrayed that very well. Also, their home lives, I forgot to say, I really do think they went to their home lives as well very well, because one of my favorite scenes in the movie actually is when Clyde goes to Bonnie's mother, and you kind of get that sense, he says, oh, she's going to come back eventually, but you don't, she's not going to. It's very sad to see, but the way that was portrayed, that was very well done. So overall, guys, like I said, I really do think this is the adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde to see. I don't think there is a better one. The musical is a very good adaptation. The problem is you just can't really see it. There is adaptations of it on YouTube, but this is really the one to see. If you want to see an adaptation, want to see the best story of Bonnie and Clyde, watch this movie. It's as good as it gets, and for me, without a doubt, I'm definitely going Bonnie and Clyde at 5 out of 5 or an A+. Probably the best movie I've watched so far. I absolutely love this movie. I got so invested in the characters. I got so invested in the setting. Just everything about it. I was pretty much glued to the screen almost the entire time. I loved everything about it. It was intense. it was crazy, and it really is very unforgettable, and it really is sad that this time period happened. I mean, the Great Depression is one of the most depressing time periods ever. We studied in my history class. It really is sad stuff, and you know, knowing this happened and things like that, it really is crazy, but I think it's a very realistic interpretation of what people had to do to survive in that time period. I mean, things really were crazy back then. But overall, guys, if you guys have seen Bonnie and Clyde, how much you guys thought of it? What is your favorite adaptation of Bonnie and Clyde? Do you prefer the musical? Do you prefer the 1967 version? Or do you prefer the 2013 version? Love to hear your thoughts on that. And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Legends tomorrow. I know you guys have been waiting for that, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.